Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis show. Following in our March theme, prepare and oh, by the way, I don't know about you, Camden, but I feel prepared today.
I feel very prepared.
Yeah. Well, and just to review, we're going to take a step back. 2021, the theme is focus. So focus on what needs to get done. What's the most important thing you need to do in order to get the results, the outcome that you're looking to achieve. January was begin, quit waiting around, start doing something, take a step. I mean, start walking, go in some direction, start doing something, create movement. Wow, I just forgot February. Help me out.
February's clarity.
Clarity. There we go.
Clarity.
Clarity, which we ain't got right now. It's kind of cloudy and foggy. That's probably why I couldn't think of it because I couldn't see it. Clarity. And then circling us all the way back around. Boy, I'm going to have some real trouble remembering all those when it comes to June. Whew.
Just wait till December.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's going to be tough. That's going to be your job. After this month, I'll let you start reviewing them because I can't remember more than three things apparently, which I've always known.
Well,
But
when I remember things, I'm actually just writing them on the wall up here, so I'll be all set.
yeah, I know. When you watch the Cam and Otis show video, notice what Camden does, his facial expression when he walks us out or runs us out is what I normally say. Just watch that. You might recognize, you might see something. And if you're Camden's elementary school English teacher, you probably recognize that face when he's reading.
That's for sure.
Oh, back to prepare, Camden. What are we prepared for today?
Well, I think, as I was thinking more about preparation and preparing for things and the conversations we've had over the last couple of weeks, I thought it would be good to kind of take a step back a little bit. We've talked about the difference between preparing and planning. We've talked about the importance of preparing. And, when we talked about the difference between preparing and planning, we kind of got into this weird little nuanced type area of what's the difference between the two. And so I thought it would be useful to take a little bit of a step back and kind of have a little bit of a more philosophical approach to preparation. So basically, and we can go back and forth on this first part here. I think you'll agree with me. We established this during February. Life is all about control. When we talk about clarity, it's about understanding what's inside your control and what's outside your control. And, what is the one thing that you are always in control of, Dad?
Your mind, your thoughts.
Your mind. Exactly. Your mind, your perceptions, your ideas, all of those different things. Those are the things that you always have control over, no matter what circumstance you are put in. And so when you think about preparation and that,
I just got to throw something out on that real quick because Viktor Frankl's book, A Man's Search for Meaning, I believe I remember the title right, but it's Viktor Frankl. That is the thesis of his survival in the concentration camp. If you haven't read that book and you kind of like in this control, mind, thought, pick that book up and read it, at least the first half of it, because it's an amazing story about how you can control what you think about and how you perceive things.
For the longtime listeners, I would compare it to the equivalent of Ernest Shackleton in Endurance for leadership. It's that same kind of like, this is the pinnacle of what we're talking about here.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Great. Well, what I was going to say is that, when you have control over your mind, you have control over your perceptions. When you're controlling your perceptions, all you really have on a daily basis is your reasoned choice, is the term that the Stoics would use for it, right? It's that I am looking at the situation in front of me, analyzing it to the best of my ability, not measured off someone else, just what I have, what I see, and making a reasoned choice based on what I see. That's all it really comes down to. That's all we have in our lives, really, is going in and being able to make those reasoned choices. You don't look back on things and, when you have new information and say, oh, well, that was a bad choice, because you say, no, I made the reasoned choice based off of what was in front of me at that time. And this is where we start getting to the preparation side of things, because when you talk about reasoned choice, there's a few different things, and we could debate these probably back and forth about what contributes to that reasoned choice. I would say there's creativity, knowledge, of course, adaptability, different things that when you're looking at a situation, how do you solve that problem the best, really? But it's how do you sharpen that reasoned choice? And I think that all goes back to preparation. that it is how do you prepare for the situation that you're putting yourself in? Not how do you plan for it, not what are steps 1 through 10, but how do you prepare yourself for the unknown unknowns that are going to come in that situation? You know, when we talk about preparing, it's, and don't hate me for this one, it's not pre-planning, it's preparing. There's a distinction between the two. We're not writing the script for what's going to happen. We're preparing ourselves mentally to make the right choice, the reasoned choice when something comes up in front of us.
Well, I was talking about the planning. One of the things that I like to pull it back around to in that preparation and the unknown unknowns, I'm going to pull all those back into one thing, and that's risk mitigation.
Mhm.
Because risk, when you identify risk and you put things into place to mitigate that risk, whether it's the effect or the occurrence of the risk, because there's just a little quick education, you always measure those two things. Well, how likely is it to occur and how bad is it if it does occur, sort of thing.
Mhm.
And you mitigate both of those if possible, right? To
And if you're an economist, you calculate a dollar amount for it.
because there's always a cost. That's not just an economist, that's a businessman.
Yes, sir.
Well, and then we could turn it into all kinds of different things. But when we mitigate risk, the risk is those things that are outside of our control. And our preparation is mitigating that risk, whether it's putting an extra jacket in your truck, a tow strap in your truck, jumper cables, all these sort of things that, I've always got in my truck that mitigate the risk of what if I slide off the road? What if
Mhm.
I'm driving down the road and somebody else slides off the road or is hurt or whatever, and I've got some stuff I can help them, right?
Mhm.
And it's the other thing, like when I go out hunting, I ain't just carrying 3 extra bullets. I've got extra bullets. I've got survival gear. I've got
Mhm.
stuff to start a fire. I've got enough water for the entire day. Every time I leave the camp, whether I'm going out for the entire day or just for the morning, I still have enough water for the entire, all these sort of things. I got chow. Believe me, I got chow. I always have chow. Got to have snacks. But all these things are me preparing to take on the unknown unknowns.
Mhm.
Because whether I'm hunting in Nebraska, Texas, or Colorado, what are the unknown unknowns? There's so many things that can happen that you don't know, and you sit there. One of the things that, and this is a bit of the art, going back to what you were talking about with the reasonable choice, because you do have to make a reasonable choice, because you can prepare and prepare and prepare. Like we
Mhm.
talked about on our first show about prepare, right? There's always something more you can do in preparation. That's the difference between prepare and ready.
Mhm.
But you can also prepare to the point of no execution.
Right.
Well,
If
let
you
me
choose, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice, right?
oh, rush. Bring it in. Bring it in.
Oh yeah.
That's right. I mean, that is one of the greatest philosophical rock songs of all time. Uh, I think they must have studied the Stoics. I don't know, but it is so true about that, because I've seen people do that. Well, let me just get one more thing. Let me just get one more, if we're hunting. Well, I need to go to the range again, check my zero. Then we get out there. Well, I need to check my zero again. And it's like, dude, did you throw your gun out of the truck when we got here and drag it behind your ATV? Is that why you got to check your zero again, or what? Or
Mhm.
all these sort of things. And what it is, it goes back to what we talked about last week, that confidence that you get when you prepare,
Mhm.
because I prepare, I walk into situations confidently, no matter what the outcome may actually happen. And this will get into some of my performance disciplines, but
Mhm.
I believe that the outcome will always have a positive outcome. There'll always be something positive, whether it was completely 90 degrees off from what I wanted or not. I've prepared for that, and I can still get the best out of that.
Mhm. I agree. I think that's a great aspect of preparation, because when you think about things, you when you're anticipating outcomes, there's this, I think we've talked about this, there's a full range of outcomes. And this is actually something that they'll talk about, behavioral therapists will talk about this in terms of helping people with anxiety and those type of things, because you tend to focus on the worst outcome instead of focusing on the best outcome. Now, the reality is that there's about 1,000 outcomes in between there. And realistically, almost every single time, don't sue me if I'm wrong on this one, folks, it'll probably land between those two. It'll almost never be the biggest best outcome, and it almost never be the baddest, the worst outcome. Those things are what we frame our reference off of. And then what we're doing is you prepare for the best, you prepare for the worst, and you're ready for everything in the middle. It comes back to having a preparation, a full understanding of your situation. What is the best possible thing that could happen? What is the worst possible thing that could happen? And reality is probably going to be somewhere between those 2 points.
Well, when we planned operations, when I was in Green Beret, we would plan against the best case scenario. That's how we would, the term we would use is what's the most likely enemy course of action? What are the bad guys? What are they most likely to do? And that would be our plan. We would write around that and prepare all our actions around that. But then when we got into contingency development, we would plan for the worst case. So we developed contingency plans on what is the absolute worst case that could happen with the enemy in that situation. And so we would have that. We wouldn't write it out, but we would rehearse it. And we would capture some pieces and parts of it, and some of it may go into the actual plan. But that way, like you were talking about, best case and worst case, that way we were covered on both ends. I mean, when shit got bad, it got bad. And, it's still, there's only so much you can do when shit gets bad. I mean, point blank, right?
Right.
So when that happens, the more prepared you are, the better you can recover from that and still achieve an outcome that's better than if you just walk into it blindly, a situation blindly, whether you're doing a presentation, you're meeting with a potential investor, hiring somebody, all these sort of things. What's the worst case? What's the best case? That is such a great way to do it. But I prefer not necessarily the best case. And I can't remember if I just said, I may have used the wrong word, but it's the most likely case.
Right.
That's what I used. Yeah. So what's the most likely? Because the best is, if you're playing against the bad guys, that you walk up and they go, "Oh my God, Americans, I quit. Here, I surrender." Right? That's best case. The bad guy you're looking for comes out and says, "Here, I admit to everything. Please put the handcuffs on me and take me away." Right?
And then the worst case is they've been secretly trained by the Russians for the past 40 years, and we're very prepared for you.
No, I won't spend a whole lot of time because I got some things in my head that it's a good. All I ever say, it's a good thing I'm on guys like me or on our side.
Oh yeah. Well,
just got to say that.
Well, I think when we're talking about this, it's really going down to, as you're preparing, you're kind of asking yourself these what if questions. And I know I used to be the what if kid in class. And so we don't want to be just the person who always go, well, what if this, what if this, what if this? But then, I'm kind of going to flip that a little bit. When someone asks you a what if question, if you're a leader of a team, let's say I'm coaching rugby tonight with U of A, and they come out and they ask me, well, what if this happens, coach? I don't get flustered because I haven't thought of the situation. I use the same tools I already have to apply it to that situation. And sometimes it takes a moment. Sometimes you have to choose not to decide. You got to come back the next day with something. But it's all about looking at those things with the same reasoned choice that you're using for situations in the past. Those things will always change. Life is always moving in front of you, but you have to have that ability to choose based on the tools that you have in your pocket.
That's great. And I got to share something that was taught to me very, very early on. I can't remember which boss it was anymore. They all kind of blend together after a while, but he said, when we get into these situations, and he said, well, what if Napoleon had a B52 at the Battle of Waterloo? We all just kind of went, all right, we'll stop here. That was usually the signal that we had gone too far. Going back to that what I was talking about, you can continue to prepare.
Mhm.
And if you're not careful, you never execute. That's where he was getting us, was stop with the what ifs, because you're gone so far out the parameters of the possibility, because you could sit there all day. I mean, whether we're talking about a bad guy or a presentation or anything like that,
Mhm.
you come in to give a presentation, and man, you got all kinds of wires from the, what is it, the RS-232 serial cable to the DVD, the HDMIs, and the extra this and that. You got a whole, pallet full of crap because you what ifed it all day long. So we
Mhm.
got in that preparation when you're what if, and I do believe 100% in the what if, and you gotta,
Mhm.
because that's how you make sure you're prepared. But you've also got to draw the line a little bit, and that's a bit of an art, right? How many times have I carried, an extra 10 pounds of gear in my rucksack that's never been touched?
Mhm.
And then at what point do I say, all right, you know, the water filtration device in the high altitude areas of Colorado, if I get in an emergency situation, I have to go down the mountain to get to the water that I'd be filtering. So I would be getting out anyway. So why am I
Mhm.
carrying that? Little, things like that, in that realism of your what ifs. That's how you start to do it. You got to think about it, and maybe you carry it in your rucksack for a while before you kind of realize what's the reality of it.
Yeah,
You know?
and I think when you're starting, that's a great point there of the reality of it, right? When you're playing, I love that. What if Napoleon had a B52? Like that was a great way of expressing what we're talking about here. Because when I think about it, I'm thinking survival situations. Obviously, my military adjacent mind, I connect a little bit with what you're talking about there. I think about rugby and all these different things. But really, what I think it comes down to is when you're prepared, you have the confidence to make those choices. If you were in some country in the middle of Eastern Europe doing all the things that you did to help us against the Russians or whatever the heck you did back in your day, Dad, that there was something that was absolutely out of the blue, something absolutely crazy, the equivalent of Napoleon having the B-52. Do you need a plan for that? Or do you have the confidence to react accordingly? You're going to see it, you're going to register it, you're going to know what that is immediately when when you see that fly overhead. You're going to immediately recognize what it is, and you're going to start making your new choice, your new adjustments based on whatever that is. And that's what we're really talking about with preparation, is that you explore enough what ifs that you're ready to adjust to any what if, is the way that I would put it.
Yeah, well, and the Rona is a great example of that.
Mhm.
I guarantee there's probably, I don't know, 100 folks. Let's just say 100, because that's a nice even number. 100 folks across the U.S. that, you know 13 months ago, or we'll just say 18 months, because there's that whole, I don't want to get into that stuff. But that 18 months ago that said, hey, better be prepared for a pandemic, right? We got to spend all this money pandemicizing our business so that, when the pandemic hits, we're pandemic proof. There's 100 people out there at least that'll raise their hand today and say, I told you so. Okay. But me as a leader, I have to look at that and say, okay, remember back to our risk analysis and the probability of occurrence and the effect of occurrence. And the probability of occurrence, it's a probability in statistics, right? Probability means a 1 in a gazillion chance. That means there is a chance. That's
Mhm.
why it's a probability. That's why in risk you can only mitigate it, by the way. Just a little bit of deeper thinking. How much money, Mr. Businessman, am I going to spend 18 months ago on pandemicizing my business?
Mhm.
I mean, because that's in the end, even in the government, y'all. I mean, truly, I've done enough stuff in the government. It still costs money.
Mhm.
People go like, they work for the government. They got unlimited. Yeah, but you know what? I had unlimited budgets my entire career, but it was still a budget. It still
Mhm.
cost money to do anything I did, right? Whether it was deploy somewhere or sit around the team room. it still costs money.
Mhm.
So anytime you do these sort of things in preparation, it costs money. And you
Mhm.
have to decide, back to your reasonable choice, what's the ROI on that? And I'll do one more proof and analysis on this. After 9/11, we put a lot of money into what's called anti-terrorism and anti-terrorism measures and random acts of anti-terrorism measures. This is RAM. I think I'm missing or screwing up an A there, but the bottom line is all those things cost money. And because I did this stuff, that was part of one of my jobs I was doing at the time. I could not measure my success because when I went and looked at probability of occurrence, I could not change the probability of occurrence because I
Mhm.
could not measure what a bad guy would be doing, where and when they would attack. All I could change and measure was the probability of effect or the of effective occurrence
Mhm.
and mitigate that. But you know what? I still didn't know. I put up barriers and chains and checks and all these sort of things, speed bumps and all that sort of stuff. You still don't know if some guy is going to come in with a drone or do a dirty bomb or all these sort of things. And how much money are you going to spend on that? You
Mhm.
know, back to the pandemicizing your business. How much money are you going to spend on continuity of operations in a pandemic situation?
Mhm.
Hmm. If I live in a floodplain, I'm going to have flood insurance. I live at 7,300 feet in elevation above sea level at the top of a hill. I ain't paying for flood insurance. You know,
You know,
that
the
that's a great example. I think that's the one that
yeah.
everybody can relate to right there.
I love that because I was even just writing down numbers just for my sake of the idea of, if it's going to cost you $1 million and there's a 1 in 10,000 chance, that means every year you need to spend $100 on it. And that's the easy answer. That's the economist answer, but that doesn't actually get you your proven outcome, right? That's the kind of point there is you spend that $100 every year. You're not necessarily going to mitigate it all the way. That's just what the value of that mitigation is,
Mhm.
right? And then the second aspect there, ooh, going back to the flood. Yeah. So as you're looking at those things, I think it's interesting because what were we talking about with reason choice? The idea that you're making a decision based off of a current situation, everything that you see in front of you, all of the tools that you have. We're in a new situation than we were 13 months ago. The question is, how has that affected your reasoned choice? If you're going through and you're planning out your business, are you going to run lean? Are you running lean anymore? Are you going to build up a little bit of a fat reserve? How has this changed your perspective on things? Hell, there's probably people out there that said, two pandemics, not going to happen. I'm running lean. This won't happen again. And they're going to bet on that. And they may be right. They may be wrong. But it's about making that reasoned choice off of what is in front of you with that. Do you take this and do you prepare in a way that is going to keep your team safe as things may change in the future? Do you take this as a lesson? Do you only prepare for pandemics or do you prepare for anything that's coming ahead? Are you prepared to adjust to any sort of economic crisis, financial crisis, another pandemic round two that comes in 5 years? Whatever it is that may be coming, how can you prepare for those things? And the reason I use those obscure kind of generic examples is because when you really think about it, it's not a plan. I've been working on Verbi for a year now. At no point did I ever write a pandemic plan. That's not part of something I need to do. I don't need to have a plan for if this happens again. I need to have a plan for if there's a flood. I need to be prepared to adjust to whatever is coming. That's
Well,
the slight difference there.
yeah, you just made me think of something that's it's good business practice in that preparation about cash reserves in your business and having, 3 months if you can. I mean, that should be every business owner's goal and being prepared for those unknowns. Having 3 months salary in cash reserves. That's hard to do
Mhm.
because, that means less profit as an owner that you're taking out. But that reinvestment assures that when the pandemic hit last year, last March 2020, and everybody was like, oh my God, light your hair on fire, shut everything down, watch Netflix, because that's what we do apparently, instead of solving problems. But if you had 3 months cash reserve for your business, man, you're crushing it, because that means that your key people, your quality people that you have in your business are sustained. And when they're sustained, then you can pull them in, those smart people that you hired and they're on your team, and you can come up with solutions
Yep.
that overcome the obstacle that just happened that you weren't prepared for.
Mhm.
That's pandemicizing your business right there.
Oh yeah, it's the equivalent of having the water filter when you're out hunting. It's, you got to have something there in that crappy situation that it's going to bridge that gap to where you can go do something else. That's what it comes down to. When that worst case scenario comes, you have to be ready to find that silver lining, find something to move forward off of, and then start building onto that. And before you go into what you learned, because I just set myself up for my own on accident, is when you were talking earlier about what is that worst case scenario. What I realized is, how do you plan for that outcome and how do you make that a positive? What is the silver lining there? And what is the worst case scenario? I was using my rugby as an example in the back of my mind. Is we get beat bad. We go play GCU next Friday and they beat us 100-0. It is terrible. What is the next thing we do? What is our silver lining? How are we adjusting?
Don't call home.
Don't call. I'm calling home after that. I'm going back to the drawing board. But that's my point. Is we're back to the drawing board. We're on to the next game. That's still a learning point. That is still something that really, at this point especially, is outside of your control, that you may or may not have been prepared for, and then you can adjust off of it. If something really, really bad happens, you can take your step back, circle the wagons, and say, okay, well, now what can we do? How can we adjust from here? If we, and I don't know if our good friend Sean O'Leary up in Phoenix listens to the podcast. I don't think so. We're coming for him next week. I ain't worried about that. But if they came out and whooped us, we would go and we would sit down with the boys afterwards and say, hey, one loss. Now we just got to beat these teams. Hey, this is what happened. Now we just got to do this. There's always a way to adjust moving forward. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about all those different outcomes, because there's always going to be a way forward afterwards. Nothing is actually going to take you out of the game completely. You have to be prepared to adjust to whatever is coming, whether it's the worst case or the best case.
No, that's great. And so is that what you learned, or did you just come up?
That was what I learned, because you were talking about taking a loss.
Whoa, time out here. You cheated.
It's called a segue.
You initiated the what you learned. 86 shows. 6 shows, folks. And Camden took the initiative. It took him this long to take the initiative. How about that? 80. Okay, well, this is the 86th show. So 85. I'll give him 85. Okay. So
what'd you learn?
Here's what I learned. And I love the whole thing of the ideal outcome, worst outcome, that spectrum, which is a reminder that our life operates on this continuous spectrum of the ideal picture, which you have to know. We could talk about that for hours. You got to know what the perfect looks like and what the worst looks like, and realize somewhere in between is where you are and where you will end up. Right. Mm-hmm. But you got to know what both of them are to be prepared. One to visualize and walk towards, one to be prepared to handle if it happens. Mm-hmm. And somewhere in that line is where you end up in everything you do. So now I'll say that, man, this show was doing really good. Now I got to swing it back over here because Camden's changing the format on.
Knocked you off a little bit, huh?
Oh, I know, man. So confused.
Well, are you prepared to adjust, or are you too close to your plan on this one?
My confidence, because I have been prepared and I am prepared and I continue to prepare. So I have the confidence to take on anything.
There you go.
How's, how's that for a little affirmation in the morning?
That's great.
Yeah. Camden, why don't you run us out?
Okay, thank y'all again for listening to today's show. Special thanks to our sponsors, Verbi Virtual Events and Tribe and Purpose. Find your purpose, build your tribe. You can check out recent episodes of the Cam and Otis Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, and check out a full archive at thecamandotisshow.buzzsprout.com. The Cam and Otis Show is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next week.